we have Quantum Leap creator Don Bellisario. And, oh boy, the star of the show, Scott Bakula.
Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, how are you doing today?
Really good.
Terrific. Terrific.
I mean, to start off, I mean, this show ended 23 years ago. Is it sort of, or 24, sorry. Are you sort of surprised that it's still so popular?
I'm not surprised because the Leapers were always great fans. Of all the shows I did, the most fans I had were for Quantum Leap. So it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, I'm curious, I mean, at what point during the show's run did you sort of realize it had gotten so big, it had grown such a big fandom?
I don't know that we ever knew while it was running. We were working so hard to make the darn thing, but we knew that we were making something that was honest and that people really, really responded to and could relate to. And with a lot of, as you all know, with a lot of sci-fi, if you can get people excited about the idea, they're with you forever. And here we are. He did it.
I mean, on that note, I want to go back to the beginning, Don. I mean, how did you come up with the idea for this show? I guess what inspired it?
I had 3 ideas that I was working on, and I decided I'd do a time show, but to do a time show I had to make it completely different from the normal time show where somebody goes back to King Arthur's court or back into World War II. So just came up with the idea that he could only leap within his own lifetime, and that put a limit on it. And made it mostly happening in the 50s when we made the show in the 80s. So that worked out well. And I went into Brandon Tartikoff, who was then head of NBC, and Brandon is now gone, was terrific. And I explained the whole concept to him. And he said, explain it to me again, so that my mother could understand it in 30 seconds. So I did it in 30 seconds. He said, I still don't get it. I said, your mother got it.
And I mean, from the beginning, did you know that you wanted to do a show that touched on so many social issues as well, and it just wasn't a sort of a fun time travel show, but also dealt with real issues as well?
Well, I didn't think about it that this is what I want to do. I want to do social issues, but social issues came naturally to the show. And once we realized that, Scott and I started to do many issues that were fun, especially making him a woman and doing the feminist issue back 23 years, 20 longer. Probably 27, 8 years ago.
And Scott, I mean, when you auditioned for the role, I mean, did you know that the role of Sam Beckett would include you having to dress in drag occasionally?
I did not. But it wouldn't have stopped me from going in, obviously, because as Dustin Hoffman said, I can be a beefsteak tomato, so in Tootsie. No, I didn't know that. I don't think any of us ever imagined that the range and scope of the kinds of roles that Sam could be a part of, or lives that he could get involved in, including a test chimp for NASA. I don't think that was ever part of the grand vision, but it just grew, and as the audience accepted it, because the first time I was in the life body of an elderly African-American driver in the Deep South, they bought it. And we followed that 3 episodes later with me in the 60s in my little pillbox hat and my high heels and my purse in a auto in Detroit working as a secretary, and you guys bought that. And I think pretty much it was like, let's just go then.
Yeah, that's what it was. Every week we came up with something new, and we began to hit social issues because we were able to do it, and people accepted it, and it made a difference.
I just want to say one more thing about that. Don always said, because Dean and I tended to want to push social issues, and Don always said, what we're doing first and foremost, our job, is to put on a great hour of entertainment for the audience. If there are things buried in every episode, or things that the audience wants to pull out and relate to, or accept, or dig deeper, that's so be it. But the idea was, and I think if you look at the breadth of his work, which is phenomenal, that he has always found relationships between his characters, the most important part of his shows, and found the truth in those relationships, and then whatever goes on around them, so be it. But he always found that first, whether it be Magnum or NCIS or JAG or Tales of the Gold Monkey or any of those shows. I'm leaving 75 out, but he was always about the relationships, and everything else grew out of that.
Well, I mean, on that note, I mean, I was curious about, because I think one of the best things about the show was your chemistry with Dean. I mean, was that there from the beginning?
You asking me?
Oh no,
you know. Well, you watched, you saw it.
I saw it. The chemistry was there. I mean, well, Scott came in and read for the role, and I played it very straight. And he walked out the door, and I said, "That's the guy. Got to have him." And Dean, of course, offered to do the role. And when Dean offered, we didn't think we would get him. I mean, he was hot on movies. He had just done Married to the Mob. But he did. And when the two of them got together, they began to work out their own little relationship. And they brought a lot of improvisation to the show. And it was terrific.
Yeah, Dean and I, we kind of knew from the get-go, from our first time we read together, that there was something good there, and you never can plan for that. You hope for it, but there's nobody like Dean Stockwell, and the show was, I mean, he was an integral part of it in many ways, more important than me, because he balanced out all of Sam's normalness and with just his zaniness, which is this guy. He was writing Al in his image. But yeah, Dean we got along great, and we had a ball working together.
Dean did everything that was politically incorrect, and Scott did everything that was correct. Put it that way.
I mean, out of curiosity, I mean, was it hard writing? It was also hard starring on a show that only had 2 series regulars. I mean, I think that must have put a lot of pressure on both the writing staff and on Scott to be in pretty much every scene as well.
Well, it wasn't a lot of pressure on me, but it was a lot of pressure on Scott, because he had to prepare for the show we were going to shoot next week while he was shooting the show this week. So he's playing a priest, and next week he's an acrobat. He has to train during lunch hour to be an acrobat when he's doing the show about being a priest. That wasn't what it was, but that explains it. And that's a tough thing to do every week. Get prepared for the next week's show while you're doing the show that's currently shooting.
And every once in a while, I wouldn't have those scripts very far in advance.
No, sometimes it only get pages.
It was the hardest job I've ever done. I was on the set every day except for 4 days in 4.5 seasons. And I was usually the first shot of the day in everything all day long, because I was the only person that carried the story, and then the only person that could see or talk to Dean. So I never got a break except when Dean was me and I was him, which only happened twice. So it was a challenge, But I would never, I had great helpers. I had great stunt people that helped me and kept me alive. The writers tried to kill me, and I literally would get a script and say, okay, who's trying to kill me this week? And I survived, and I'm glad. I'll never regret a day or a minute of being on that set.
I mean, you also found time in there to also direct several episodes as well.
Just three. No, I did not. He said no the first 2 years, and he was so smart. I said, could I direct this year, Don? No. Thank goodness, because then I'm directing an episode. I'm starring in every episode because there was no break. Couldn't be, I'll direct the episode that I'm not in. That didn't exist. So I twisted his arm. So I would be shooting an episode. I'd be prepping an episode at the same time. Then I would be finishing an episode, starting a new episode, and cutting an episode, and handing over a director's cut to him. So it was like 3 weeks of insanity, and it was very exhausting. And happily, I mean, I'm glad I got to direct them. I had a ball doing it, but that added to a lot of stress.
I mean, I think the other thing with the show is that every week you guys were going to a new location, a new period, a new town. I guess, was it hard on the production side to sort of turn around these new sets every few days?
Well, we had a great team on set construction, on design, wardrobe. We had a lot of really good people, and everybody loved making the show because it was easy to work with Scott. Of all the people I've worked with over 30-some years in the business, he has been the easiest, and that's the truth.
But the reason the show was so good is because he is a stickler for detail. So if it was the wrong license plate on the wrong year car in 1953, we got it right. If those shirt collars didn't exist in 1974, we got it right. So he started from the top, and that's seeped down to every level and made everybody care because they knew that the boss wasn't looking the other direction. He demanded everybody make the show as perfect as possible, which is almost impossible. It is impossible doing hourly television, but we did. If you go back and look at our shows, the detail is extraordinary, and it's because of him, because he made it happen.
Sometimes it went a little too far. I remember asking for calla lilies on an episode. I thought I wanted calla lilies on a porch. And then I noticed as the episodes went on, actually I didn't notice, but calla lilies kept popping up in every episode. And then one day, Greensman came to me and said, Don, we can't find any calla lilies in the United States. We have to go to Australia to get them. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, you wanted calla lilies in every show. No, I wanted them in that one show.
If you remember the show and you remember the last episode in the bar, it was an exact replica of his dad's bar in Pennsylvania, down to the pig's knuckle jar on the bar counter. And he had pictures that he'd saved, and the pictures went out to the set designers and Cameron and everybody to make this bar correct, because I'm flying my family, his family, in to see the bar. And they all came from Pennsylvania, and they all had this huge flashback that they were in their uncle or dad, whomever they were, however they were related. And it was amazing. That bar was amazing.
The bar was an exact duplicate of the bar, and to tell you how exact it was, there was one wall that used to have a door that went through to another room, and that door had been sealed off and the wall painted over, but you could still see the outline of the door slightly if you looked real close. So I had them put that in, and they said to me, you can't see it, the camera will never see it. I said, I don't care, I know it'll be there. So they did. They thought I was nuts, but, and maybe I was.
On the subject of the series finale, I mean, I think when it aired, and it was somewhat controversial. I mean, looking back on it now, how do you guys sort of feel about the series finale?
What was that question? I didn't catch it.
How'd you feel about the series finale?
Oh, I loved it. It was emotional for me because it was my home. I was 18 years old when the bar was replicated, we replicated the bar when I was 18. And the finale, I didn't want the show to end, but it had to. So it was hard. I was proud of that episode. Everybody was.
Well, and you should have been. It was a great episode. Last episodes are always controversial, and I always say to writers, if you want to challenge more than writing just an hour of television, write an hour of television that is the last hour of television that show will ever have on. Write it so that it could also come back next fall. Write it so that it could possibly become a movie of the week, or write it so that it could still potentially be a feature film someday. And make everybody happy. And Don, if you go back and watch that episode, he filled in all of those circles. He checked off all those boxes. And yes, not everybody loved it. My 11-year-old son at the time, when he watched the show, he was in tears and wouldn't speak to me because he said, "I don't believe you didn't get to go home." And he was heartbroken about it. And I said, I gave him Don's number.
I mean, the great thing, or the upside of Sam not being able to go home, I mean, I think is right now we're in this sort of huge sort of string of revivals and reboots. I have to ask, is there any chance of Quantum Leap ever coming back in some form?
Well, I don't know. I just finished writing a Quantum Leap feature. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I did write it.
Did everybody hear that? He just finished writing a Quantum Leap feature.
He has to clue you in.
Can you tease what it's about? Like, is it? I guess how did you come up with the story? Is it something that's been tossing around in your mind for a while?
The story for the feature?
Yeah.
No. I write things exactly the same way. I just start writing and I let it take me wherever it's going to take me. I'm entertained the same way the audience is. So I just put Scott and Dean in my head, kind of rebooted them, and went from there.
I think if he keeps at it, someday he's going to be successful, don't you?
Well, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you both for coming. This has been great. Thank you all.
Thank you,
for coming
Ken.
as well.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all. Dean says hello.
Scott, John, come out for a photo.